Hello and welcome to the Savage Movie Night Podcast. I'm your movie-related Hard Rock Cafe knockoff restaurant chain that is still somehow a thing in 2024 host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is my using a small child to shoplift low-quality steaks co-host, Kristen. How are you, Kristen?
Hey Adam, it's a gloomy day here, but I'm doing good.
Well, to cheer everybody up, you are a bit of a new cat owner at the moment. So what are some tips for new cat owners?
Well, I guess one thing is for sure is tucker them out before bedtime. Because if you want them to sleep with you, you've got to play with them before bed. You got to keep them engaged throughout the day. No evening naps, that kind of thing. I think that was the biggest adjustment for us compared to our previous cat, which was an old lady who just slept all the time, anytime. And this guy, he needs a little more stimulation. He needs a little more playtime.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the same way with any younger pet, whether it's a cat or a dog or whatever, that the younger ones need that exercise, need that stimulation. Otherwise, they start to go a little nuts. So, excited for you. I know you're really enjoying having the little guy around. So, can't wait to for the first episode where he meows and makes his first appearance on the show. Uh, but of course, it can't be the Savage Movie Night podcast without our archetypal yuppie actor trying to play against type as a blue collar guy co-host, Rob. Hi, Rob.
I'm looking around. That's me? All those adjectives. I just.
You don't
What's
see the
happening?
resemblance between yourself and Michael J. Fox? I'm shocked.
No, not at all. I need to look in the mirror once again.
What are some movies that you have been looking forward to lately?
The one that's really on top of mind right now that I really want to see is this next Dune. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of the first one. I know, there's a lot of hype coming on it. I don't mean to jump on the hype train, but just for me, I'm, sci-fi nerd, so I get into that stuff. And I thought they really executed really well in the first one and made me want to see this next one.
Yeah, well, I mean, Denis Villeneuve is a great actor. A great director. That Arrival was amazing. Blade Runner 2049 was amazing.
Mhm.
Prisoners was great. Sicario. But he does seem to have this sweet spot for, sci-fi with Arrival and Blade Runner 2049, and now Dunes Part 1 and 2. I think the one thing we have to ensure, though, is that there is actually more Zendaya in this one. Otherwise, I think audiences are going to riot because they were a little upset last time that she was advertised that she's in the movie, and then she's in it for like 5 minutes.
That's a good point.
We are back to talk even more about Light of Day. This is part 2. So if you haven't listened to part 1, why are you starting with part 2? Stop, go back and listen to part 1, and then come right back here. But in case you don't, and for those that need a refresher, here we go. Light of Day is a 1987 film from writer-director Paul Schrader, the man behind Hardcore and American Gigolo. The movie stars Michael J. Fox and Joan Jett as brother and sister Joe and Patty Raznick, who play in a band and work in a factory together. Patty is a single mother to a son, Benji, and her relationship with her own religious mother, played by Gina Rollins, is strained by Patty's continued pursuit of music, her refusal to divulge the identity of her son's father, and her animosity to religion. When the plant lays off many of the employees, including Joe and Patty, they decide this is the time to take the band on the road. But a huge fight between Joe and Patty after he sees her using her son to shoplift steaks brings things to an end as Joe heads home with Benji. And let's talk about the rest of the end of Light of Day. But first, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Jazzology with Willard Jenkins. Jazzology is a fun and challenging jazz trivia show where two contestants go head-to-head for the chance to win $100 and prove their jazz knowledge. Watch along and see if you know the answers. Want to prove you are a true jazzologist by appearing as a contestant on the show? Use the link in the description of any episode to sign up. New episodes air every other Friday on Savage Content YouTube channel, youtube.com/Savage Content. And all past episodes are available under the Live tab. Thanks to Jazzology for sponsoring today's episode. And now, back to the show. Kristen, take it away.
So kind of going back into after post fight, Patty, she storms off and Joe is like, all right, I'm taking Benji home. This tour life is not for a little kid. Like, I'm going to take him back. And so he takes him to their parents' home. And when Patty learns that that's where they went, she comes over and the mom right away just starts berating Patty for neglecting her son while on tour, tries to get her to speak to the minister, and Patty flies off the handle when she hears that suggestion. And we don't really know why, but we will find out. And Joe intervenes and he kind of takes Patty to the basement to kind of cool down. And it's while they're down there, she apologizes for what happened in Michigan. And she's kind of contemplating what life would have been like if she never became a mother. She's clearly desperate for like something to change in her life, something to make her own. So she tells Joe that they need to take the band to the next level and experiment with something more, like maybe metal or techno pop metal, she lists specifically. And Joe's kind of like not really sure about any of that. And it's kind of in this next scene, he's at this Fabulous Thunderbirds concert and they perform the song Twist It Off. And he's kind of with other members of the band that are also in the Barbusters. And one of them is looking to leave for a better paying gig, which kind of gets into our earlier conversation. And because he's not the only one, like this one guy's looking for a better paying gig, another one's looking to pull out, and it seems like the band is just falling apart, and Patty seems to be the only one that wants to continue to raise them up a level while the others kind of want to expand beyond the bar scene. But then back at home, Patty is telling Joe, like, oh, I'm going to audition for the Huns. They're this local metal band. Like, it's going to be so cool. Like, we should go audition together. But Joe has no interest in joining the Huns. And so Patty sees, like, Joe's concern about the stability of the family, because he's like, you really shouldn't be going out and doing this. Like, you've got this kid to like worry about. And she's like, oh, you're just like everyone else. You're just trying to tell me how to live my life. And so they have this fight. And Benji is in the room in the area and he starts crying. And so he's kind of taken out of the room. And that's where that scene ends, where it's just kind of this back and forth of like, I want to do something with my life, but I've got this dang kid chaining me down, basically. Yeah, so that's kind of that section. I don't even know where to begin with my thoughts. That band they went to see, I didn't think Twisted Off was that bad. Like, they were like making fun of it. The two characters didn't like it, but I thought it was one of the more interesting songs of the film, actually. So that is something that it's not even the main character's band that I actually like the song more of.
And at this point, I was I don't like her. I don't like you, Patty. You're so self-centered that this is how you're treating your kid. You can't read what's going on around your life. The choices that you make are all excused by others because of, I guess, maybe the way you look. I don't know what this hall pass that she gets. I don't understand where that comes from. But if you would put this in modern day times, you're really effing up.
And later on, like by the end of the movie, you do kind of get somewhat of an explanation, at least a modern explanation for some of her erratic behavior. That she's clearly, it turns out she's gone through some serious stuff that would be very traumatic and leave some very big mental scars that haven't been treated. But that's never, at best, Joe is the only one who knows that. And I can't remember if he actually knows that or not.
I don't think so. I don't think he knows for sure that it is I don't think he for sure knows the father.
Yeah, because
I'm trying to be spoiler free.
Because I think he kept refusing to, like Patty was willing to tell him, but he didn't want to know, thinking it was a situation different than it was. Because that's another source of tension between Patty and her mother is Patty refuses to tell her mother the name of the father of Benji.
And is also kind of swearing off religion, and the mom and dad are very religious, and so she's very much against that whole thing. And
Yeah,
something I didn't really mention in the summary, but like before that fight that Joe and Patty have about her wanting to join the Huns, like Joe does bring home a date. For that's there, I think briefly. I think that's part in the plot, right? Where that's where he brings her back, and it's like her this poor girl that just comes home to this chaos, and it's just
yeah,
like why do you want to join a metal band? Like oh like the metal guys don't even try to get tan, and it was just like these other weird, strange comments that also like I'm talking weird script moments where I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, and I felt kind of bad for this normie girl because Patty is like so rude to her for like I'm okay. The metal comment was weird, but before that,
yeah,
she was just being like totally insufferable to this
yeah,
random woman that her brother brings home, which kind
yeah.
of leads into something else that I have a comment on later, but we'll wait
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. The somewhat weird relationship between Patty and Joe, but like just all of like, there's this whole vague strain of romantic subplots with Joe. We're talking about like he only dates bimbos and that kind of thing, and like some real misogynistic language,
Right.
and like you do see a few of them, and you know, like I mean like literally, I think some of the lines are like I like him the dumber the better or something like
Oh my
that, and
God.
like just like how ditzy Joe's girlfriends tend to like pretty and not bright Joe's girlfriends tend to be. And you think like, okay, maybe like, because they even show a few of them. And so you're thinking like maybe later they'll show he's maturing by dating something else, but it really there. Like it serves no purpose. Like it doesn't really further the story or further character growth or really say anything about Joe. It just is something that's there, and you're like, okay. And so again, like you don't know if it's something that was left in editing or, during the various rewrites, it's, an appendage, vestigial tail, remnant of the script of previous scripts. It's just okay.
Yeah, and it's not far from his family ties role either, right? So you don't know if this is because even family ties, the way he treats his sister and other
Uh-huh.
women, maybe except for his wife, you don't know. It's like, okay, is this is typical? Like this is Michael J. Fox, right? This is not the character. So it starts to get a little confusing on what you're supposed to think at that point. So I agree with you there. I think that
But
there's a couple other members I want to bring up, if you don't
yeah,
mind,
yeah,
that just kind of stick out because how can you not, like, as a member of the Barbusters band, one of anyone of a certain age immediately recognizes somebody on that band,
hmm
Michael McKean, who if Michael McKean is really well known, again, if you're a certain age as Lenny from Laverne and Shirley, and I mean he just sticks out like a sore thumb. You see Lenny there. Well, great guy. Yeah, he's also known for playing David St. Hubbins in Spinal Tap, Chuck McGill on Better Call Saul, and Mr. Green in Clue.
yeah,
He's also a composer. He won, a Grammy for A Mighty Wind and a bunch of other accolades. Just a great, great actor. And then
yeah,
there's Cherry Cherry Jones, who plays Cindy Montgomery. And Cherry Jones started her career in theater before transitioning to film and TV in 1980. She also received various accolades, three Primetime Emmy Awards, two Tony Awards. She's been part of a Broadway production, Stepping Out, The Heiress, and Doubt. TV roles included The West Wing, Succession. She's appeared in other films such as Signs, The Village, Ocean's 12. So
yeah,
a well known
yeah.
talent here.
Yeah, well, it's like Cherry Jones, especially like from Succession. I also know her from she does a lot of audiobook narration, but I wouldn't have recognized her if uh I hadn't read the Wikipedia. But Michael McKean, like you said, in many ways stands out like a sore thumb. And while he's done very excellent work in drama like Better Call Saul, especially around this time, he didn't do a lot of drama. So his casting, like he didn't do a lot of drama before or directly before or after this. So it wasn't like he was trying to break into dramatic roles. So it's a very odd choice. And I mean, clearly he has the musical skills from Spinal Tap and other stuff, but it was just, in some ways, it was jarring to see him there, you know?
Right, right. Yeah,
It's
it was
like, wait,
curious.
what are you doing here? So,
That's kind of how I felt about a fair amount of the cast. Like, what are you doing here? How'd you
yeah,
get onto this project? Oh my
yeah,
goodness. Yeah, so we've kind of talked about just Patty. Just, we know that
yeah.
she's got some issues and she unresolved issues. She could be, getting some therapy, some help, but I guess it was the 80s. Therapy wasn't as frequent back then. But anyway, so she decides she's going to audition for the Huns. She does it with the song Sweet Emotion. She's playing the guitar, doing an audition. And then it's at this point the Barbusters, they go their separate ways. Joe returns to, I guess, his same manufacturing job. I remember he went back to work, and then he's kind of caring for Benji as a surrogate father. And so life in Cleveland continues. It becomes clear that the mother, Jeanette, is starting to like lose her memory. She just suddenly forgets that they have a dishwasher and is like washing the dishes regular at the sink. And then Joe's father does confirm that her memory is indeed fading, but he doesn't really bring it up very much because he doesn't want to upset her. So that whole thing is going on. So you're kind of just getting a moment to see Joe acting as Benji's surrogate father while Patty's off trying to be a rock star or whatever. Um, so there's a couple things he does. He like takes him to his old friend's gig. He bathes him. He plays a song together with him. And then there is a moment where Joe does go and visit Patty at one of her gigs, and we hear kind of like Looks That Kill by Motley Crue kind of playing in the background as we're setting the scene for that moment. I wanted to at least call out that song because it's iconic and it
Mhm.
was interesting, fun having it in here.
Yeah.
But it's at this point like Joe is trying to convince Patty to come and just see her own kid, and they have a
Mhm.
fight about how they see life differently because it's like she's refusing to because Benji is staying at their parents' house, and because she doesn't want to go to the parents' house, she's just deciding not to go back and see her child. So that's a whole thing going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thoughts here? Anything we'd like to add before we keep going?
No, I was just gonna say that to me it felt like this is where you're like, okay, I guess I am rooting for Joe because he's making responsible decisions, he's making good
Right.
choices, he cares for the kid, he sees how his sister is acting, he's picking out what's important in life to prioritize, and you see him be less musical. Now he comes back around, but I think that this is very reminiscent of sort of like the maturity of a young man, like who's in his young 20s and kind of wilds out, and then sees, okay, life is not about always about partying. There's repercussions and the choices that you make. That's what I kind of got out of that. And I think that
Yeah,
that's
but
really
again, like it wasn't clear like what he was like if he's gonna settle down, like he wasn't like making long-term career decisions, like okay, like I need to be serious about like my job and making money, like because I gotta take care of Benji, and then you get like Rob, to you, I was starting to like, okay, Joe's the main character, like Joe's the
Right.
one we're supposed to be rooting for. And then you get the
yeah.
awkward bath scene.
Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, maybe we're not supposed to be rooting for anybody. Uh,
I just don't understand. And it was like it was not really censored either. Like
no,
I was
no,
really
and,
upset
and,
by
and
it.
it didn't really serve any purpose other than, and which you again could have done in much different ways, showing that Benji is now starting to think of Joe as a father figure, and Joe is uncomfortable with him calling him dad. Uh,
I forgot
eh,
about that. Guys, let's just say what it is for the audience who don't know. Michael J. Fox
naked
is in
child, yeah, in a
is
bath
naked in a tub.
with a child. And
He's
you
like
Yes.
see
bathing him.
full child nudity. Uh,
And yes, I thought we were going to see his too. Hilarious.
yeah.
Oh my
Um,
God.
well, and
Yeah, so that whole thing just really, it was at that point where I was like, I can't in good faith, like I wasn't enjoying this movie, but now I'm just really not enjoying my
yeah,
time. I was like, this is just getting weird. I don't even understand where the plot is going at this point.
yeah.
Oh
Well,
man.
and again, like going back to like I understand, we talked about the transfer not being the best earlier. I understand that, I accept that, but um, it's and we talked about how flat everything, how evenly lit everything is. That there isn't a lot of contrast, a lot of shadows. Even the lens choices. There isn't a lot of depth or zooms or anything. That it's very boring framing. So a lot of times that comes down not just to the director but also the cinematographer they're working with. So at a certain point, I got curious, like who is the cinematographer? Has he and uh, Paul Schrader, ever worked together before? And it turns out this is like their fourth movie together. Uh, and so, like, they've done like American Gigolo and Cat People, and I think Mishima, um, and then this one, and this is their final one, but together. But so I was like, okay, maybe it's just the cinematographer. Uh, Let me watch at least one of these other movies and see if they have the same issue. And so I go back and I'm able to find American Gigolo on Paramount Plus, and I go and watch that. Sure enough, it's shot like an actual movie with lighting and contrast and everything. A lot of it is very brightly lit just because it takes place in LA, especially during daytime shots. But there are other shots that, where there's plenty of contrast and interesting things. And, it's not shot like a TV movie, which this is. And, and it was overall a much better movie, which we can talk about later because which can go into our bank of movies to talk have on the show because Blondie's Call Me is from that movie, so it fits the criteria. And also a fun little coincidence about like an hour or so into it, at one point there's a scene with Richard Gere's character and Lauren Hutton, I think, where they end up in or no, maybe it's Richard Gere's character, and I think he's getting followed by like a PI or something. Flack from Lauren Hutton's husband is a state senator, a guy from his office, and he confronts the guy, and it's in front of a movie theater, and they have a big poster for the Warriors because that was in theaters as they were filming it, which I thought was a fun little connection. But I watched a whole nother movie to try and figure out why the cinematography was so like not the lighting and the framing, not just like the camera movement that Paul Schrader himself criticized, but all the other stuff
Yeah,
with how it looks in the shot. Um, and Basically, I didn't get an answer because it's like, no, these guys actually know how to work together.
no, that's a great point. And one analogy from that era, I would say, would almost be like, the transitions from the cinematography of blue collar areas and then transitioning to other scenes the way Flashdance does compared to this movie.
Yeah, well,
You know,
I mean, really, like, especially if you watch a lot of like TV from this era, it's filmed more like not even like the highest budget TV movie would be. It's filmed more like a mid-level TV movie would be.
mhm.
Because like
Lifetime.
well, no, it wouldn't even be Lifetime because, like, cable was just really in its infancy at the time, so they wouldn't. Like you're talking like the network stuff at this point in time.
I'm talking like Lifetime level of filmmaking, which is
Yeah,
like
yeah,
basic base level TV movie.
yeah. Because like you do in this era get some TV movies and even some TV shows that have really high production values, but this wouldn't even necessarily meet that level, and so again, it's just weird. Uh, so
Super
anyway,
weird.
yeah, we can,
Yeah, we can breeze past that. But
yeah,
I will say one small other thing, just that like even though Patty is a not great person, when you hear some of the things the mom says, you kind of are like, oh my God, yeah, like no wonder you turned out
Mhm.
a little kooky. Like
yeah,
there's one point where she was like saying to Joe, like, thank God I had two children. And I'm like, this woman is terrible too. Oh my goodness. Like, and they it is indeed drama. And so, like, I hate to, I realize now that I was talking smack on this woman and then immediately cut to her getting a call that she has the ovarian cancer because she's in the
Yeah.
hospital. So that's the next part of this film, because you kind of get to see this moment where, she's losing memory, that kind of thing. And then she ends up in the hospital and has that diagnosis. And it's in her weakened state that she starts asking for Patty. And Joe is kind of determined to bring her back home because he kind of wants them to have that moment together, or I guess closure in some way. So he goes to a Huns show to try to look for Patty, and the song playing during that gig is Rabbit's Got the Gun. So I wanted to mention that guy, which was an interesting one. But yeah, after the show, Joe gets Patty to go with him to the hospital, and it's in this third act. We also see Patty reunite with Benji, and then also members of the Barbusters. They reconcile at the Euclid Tavern, and then kind of other groups that they had all been in kind of didn't really work out, so they all kind of come back together to just talk about things and say sorry about what's going on with your mom, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. And so Joe and Patty in this moment, they're kind of talking about how both of their dreams involve music, but the way that they see it looks different, which also vague. Pause. So
Yeah.
Joe kind of tells Patty that he compares every girl to her. So yeah, so that's we're gonna share our thoughts on that one in a second. I have very much to say about that particular scene where they're dancing together, but I do just want to also put in this part of the plot that it's like at the hospital, the Reverend is kind of claiming that Patty is trying to strip the mom Jeanette of her faith, but she's clearly like this guy clearly has ulterior motives, and then if anyone who's been paying attention to this plot summary might be starting to put some pieces together before that even happens, because there is kind of this moment where you're kind of like, oh, this Reverend's kind of sleazy. I don't like him. Something's up with him. But there's also this kind of brief reprieve in this part of the movie where you get Joe and Benji playing a song that they have together called You've Got No Place to Go. And they're kind of struggling with the situation, but you're hearing this song kind of play over all these different types of clips that are going on. And I will say, like that one, it was that one was cute with Joe and Benji, because I mean the little kid, he's cute and he's trying his best to sing along to the song. So like that was decent.
Right.
But yeah, there's like so much to unpack here. Wherever you guys want to start, go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I thought that scene with Joe and Benji was cute. I just thought it went on way too long.
Mm.
Like, a number of things in this movie. Like, it's like, okay, we got the point. Like, you can, and then it just stayed to the point it was awkward. Uh, um, and you're like, why the hell are we here? But yeah, no, you called out the you know, uh, the incestuous stuff, and you know, uh, um, again, like it's hard to tell where some of that awkwardness came in. Like, did that some of that come in from trying to change it from two brothers into a brother and a sister, where, it's like, man, I always looked up to you, like I always wanted to be you kind of thing, and then, Schrader, who's just not good with emotions, describes it badly when changing it to a brother and a sister. Like,
I don't even know what. Yeah, because like as soon as he said it, I was like, "What?" I had to like rewind to make sure I heard him say it right. I was like, "Did he
yeah,
just say what I thought he said?" And then I was like, "Okay, it just continues to get weird because like it wasn't even like I'm comparing other people to you. It's like I'm comparing my love interest to you.
yeah,
That's like really like even if that's a rewrite, like that is not even, because even if you had a brother you looked up to, you wouldn't be comparing your
yeah,
brother to your love interest. You wouldn't, any sibling in any variety. That is not the move. That is super strange. So that whole part, I was like, okay, I don't even know what they're trying to do here, but I don't like it. I'm not into it. And
yeah,
it's like I don't know if it was just the script. I don't know if it was just the like because it's not even that Joan Jett and Michael J. Fox had any chemistry or anything. It wasn't like
Yeah.
a thing where you were like, oh yeah, these two people should be together. It was kind of just a weird vibe that I think it just must have been how the script was written, that you just feel weird
Yeah.
about the two of
Well,
them the whole
well,
time.
there was a whole weird vibe where you almost felt like instead of being a brother sister duo, it would have worked better where like this whole plot would have worked better if it was they were just like close friends who,
Hmm.
never dated and didn't realize their
Yeah,
feelings for each other
Hmm.
and you know uh,
neighborhood
uh,
friends.
yeah, yeah,
Way
no. And
better.
then at the end, Patty realizes, her place, like where she really wants to be is with Joe and Benji, especially as, Benji now sees Joe as a father or something, like you could have had just about everything else be the same, and that would have made things a lot
Yeah,
better. It
just
would have
just
But
given
the
the
switch a
hot
whole
tub.
couple
thing,
things.
yeah, it would have given the whole thing a bit more of a purpose. Um, you know, uh, but
I agree. With the exception of the Boba Bath, I agree. All that could have been better if that was the Joe's role.
yeah.
Right. It just
Yeah.
it just would have made so much more sense. Um, and I did want to mention that like I wrote down my initial thoughts for Rabbit's Got the Gun, and I did think that that one was like a little bit better as well, but that's because I'm into metal. Like
Uh-huh.
I'm into metal, so of course I think something like this just was sounded more interesting to me. I was like, okay, I can vibe with this one a little bit more. But yeah, but
So
you don't get very much with it either. Like so many of these songs, you get maybe like a minute, if that.
I think that it doesn't really matter what genre you're personally into if you know good music. And I watched this movie thinking this is a music um what's the word? It's a music purposed movie, like where the music
yeah,
is going to
yeah,
be
Music
impressive,
based.
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's gonna have an impact here. And I was so disappointed in it. I mean, and you could just take the 80 different 80s movies that are in this class, and like I'm not saying it's easy, but there's a formula, and if some basics like strong songwriting isn't there and strong songs, it doesn't hit. And that's a huge element to remove out of this movie, let alone all the other problems that it had.
yeah,
Um, One thing I want to mention, and Kristen, you brought up the element of the reverend and religion, and um, Joan Jett's character, Patty, right? She
Hmm.
throughout the movie, she had digs against religion, and many times you kind of just brushed it off as okay, that's sort of fits the description of her demographic, where she comes from, maybe, and then she keeps on digging. Okay, there must be a little backstory there. And if you're watching carefully, you kind of start to like see these little hints, and
Yeah.
it
yeah,
basically gets revealed that
yeah. It'll get revealed, I think, in the next little plot bit that
If we want, we could probably
yeah.
just talk
Okay.
about it
well,
now.
should I reveal it now? So yeah, no, Reverend Ansley,
Yeah,
he's actually the father of her child. Wait, does
yeah,
that make sense? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
of the child.
And it wasn't a consensual coupling
Right.
um, that led to it. That uh, uh, and that then explains all her animosity and especially also her refusal to every time her mother says, "Oh, go talk to the Reverend." It's like,
Yeah, that she's very much against it and just doesn't
yeah,
want anything to do with him, which is totally fair given what happened.
yeah,
Um, and of course, we're also it's fine if we jump ahead because like I want to mention also that like she does eventually tell her mother, but I think she didn't want to because her mother had such high regard for this man that
yeah.
like
She just
it's like she just didn't want to. She just I
that
guess
that
she just didn't think she believed her and just didn't want to put that in her head. Like,
well, and I also think like maybe this is me being too nice, but I also think I think it's a bit of she didn't think her mother would believe her, but I also think
mm,
it's The one of the few nice things Patty does in the movie is she, as much as she hated religion and hated the Reverend, she didn't want to destroy her mother's faith. You
Yeah.
know, she didn't want to be responsible for that. So, you know, uh, but
Shows that she does care in a way.
yeah, but and this kind of gets into like the whole original purpose of the film was really these scenes with the mother throughout the movie and especially at the end, because Schrader was trying to exercise his own complicated emotions around his mother, who was a very religious, sharp-tongued woman who had recently passed. Um, and so, uh, I think it's pulling from interaction. Some of the arguments are pulling from interactions he had had with her. This is just guessing based on, where he said the source of some of the inspiration was. And then, some of that, the kind of reproachment, the making up at the end that he might have wished he had. Uh, uh, but uh, and that also explains why those moments are the strongest of the film, even if they do at times, kind of veer more into the melodramatic than just the
Hmm.
dramatic.
Tom Irwin, who plays Reverend Ashley, Tom Irwin developed connections during his time in the Steppenwolf Theater of Chicago, where he met Laurie Metcalf, John Malkovich, Gary Sinise, and Joan Allen, actors he still works with together as often as possible. Um, he has been involved in over 50 Steppenwolf productions as an actor or director, and his filmography includes Marley and Me, My Life and Times, and more recently the Apple TV series The Moaning Show.
Sorry, I was just going to say about Tom. I think he was, and I can't remember for sure, but so Steppenwolf Theater was founded by like Gary Sinise and John Malkovich and some of those guys. And I want to say Irwin might have been one of the founders, but even if he's just a significant part of it, that is a legendary theater there in Chicago that has produced
Yeah.
very, very big names. So cool that even if he was very good at playing a creep to the point you're worried about him in real life, glad he was able to be in the movie.
Right.
Right on. And then we have Dr. Naderson, and Dr. Naderson was played by Del Close. Del is an actor and writer. Is less remembered today for his work in those fields than he is for the influence he had in others. Del was one of the founding fathers of the improv comedy, co-founding the Improv Olympic in Chicago. He was also a teacher, mentor, and friend of many of the biggest names of comedy for decades, from John Belushi and Bill Murray to Chris Farley and Bob Odenkirk. The list of students is far too long to cover here. He doesn't have an extensive filmography, but the most of the roles are smaller, little ones that if you blink, you miss it. But he does have a bigger role in the 1988 remake of The Blob.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting the level that people have that are in this.
Another interesting character is a band member of The Problems, a guy by the name of Reznor, the Trent Reznor. Trent had dropped out of college when he was performing in a band called Exotic Birds. That's when he was casted for this film, along with bandmate Frank Valli and musician Mark Addison. Reznor would continue on with Exotic Birds for a while. They broke up. They got back together again in 1989. But at that point already, Reznor was already in a new direction with a new band and project that he called Nine Inch Nails, which we all know love so well today. Um, Eventually, he would score more movies and television shows with his partner Atticus Rose. Surprisingly, of all the big names involved with this project, he's the only one to have won a competitive Academy Award. Trent Reznor.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
a
Oh.
he's an interesting guy. Yeah, like it's I think it's like also a blink and you'll miss it for him, his appearance in it, because
Hmm.
I couldn't even it's like I knew when I was looking up information about this movie that he was in it, but I could not remember where, because I think it
Yeah.
was like he was playing in the bar when all of the bands were like when the bar busters were getting back together, like I think they were
Yeah.
like the
Yeah. Yeah.
current bar band. So
Yeah.
it's like very unless you kind of know it, it's sometimes you wouldn't even notice that it's him. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe big fans, maybe, but for me, I hadn't even caught it the first time.
Yeah. No, I think it's like that. And then also, to reference Rob, you sent me uh, uh, that video of one of the other early bands Reznor was in, like around this period or a little later, where he was acting just as a sideman for someone else's project, and you know uh, he stood out like a sore thumb in that one. Well,
Oh
it's just
man, you would have
because
thought he
like.
was like the piano player of a Euro group.
Well, like he was dressed like you would expect Trent Reznor to be dressed, like but like the band itself is like very like 80s synth pop, like the little lead singer is very uh uh, uh you know into that, like super 80s kind of look, like very poppy kind of look, and then the rest of the band just looks like professional musicians, and then Trent Reznor is out there, with like his darker, kind of shaggy hair, and like just like almost like an army jacket or something. Like he just did not look like he fit in with the rest of it. Looked like there were three different groups, like the other professional musicians backing this guy, and then Trent Reznor. And so it was
Yes.
kind of funny, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, it was very much a blink and you miss it kind of cameo, and also just the ultimate in trivia, like hey, here's baby Trent Reznor.
Yeah, definitely a fun little cameo to look out for. So we kind of already covered the big reveal, the big plot reveal about how
Yeah.
Benji's father is Reverend and I can't, my brain broke trying to say that. Reverend
Everyone-
Ainsley. Yeah, so that was an unfortunate development, and then
Mhm.
that is kind of revealed while Jeanette, the mom, is on the deathbed, and she also kind of expresses this wish for her husband to remarry and that Patty to join her in heaven, which basically
Mhm.
means like, get back into faith. I like, please, I
Yeah.
want to see you there, whatever. And Patty in this, really vulnerable moment does
Yeah.
agree to tell the
At
dad
least
and to do that.
and at least in the moment, tell her mother what her mother needs to hear, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, just give her some peace when she is passing. So she does indeed pass away after that. And then it kind of cuts to the funeral service, and the whole family's there. People are paying respects, but Patty is absent, nowhere to be found. And one of the members of the Barbusters, he is at the funeral, and they're all supposed to play a reunion show that night, which weird, but so like while at the funeral service like thing, he is also thinking like, yeah, I doubt Patty's gonna make it to our gig
Yeah.
either. And Joe is just like, sick of this disappearing act that she does, so he goes looking for her, finds her at an arcade, and then confronts her about all of her absences, and just declares how much he used to look up to her, and how he just is so disappointed in the way she is and the way she's been acting. And then it's kind of like from this discussion that I think Patty gets this a bit of a wake up call. And so she leaves the arcade, she goes to the funeral home, embraces her father, and then it kind of cuts to the final scene of the Barbusters playing back at the Euclid Tavern, and they're getting ready to start their set. They're also it's pretty much just like a copy of the beginning, because they're about to play, but Patty's missing. They're wanting to get started, but then Patty does arrive just in time for the first chorus of Light of Day. And so the band's reunited, and then it kind of ends with this performance. Credits are rolling while the song's playing. So that is our film. That is the end, the things that happened there. Um, so one of the first things I wanted to say was that I could not understand. So they're at the mother's funeral, but they're playing a concert the same night. Like
No,
what? What is that logic? That I'm
I
like, okay, how first off, how are you emotionally ready to do something like that? But also like, I feel like I get what they were going for of like, Patty, you got to stop like abandoning things. But also like, I feel like at this point it would be totally
yeah.
valid to not want to play after your mom's funeral, you know?
It would, but I also understand like people grieve in different ways, and for some of them, this may be, uh, 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 an acceptable outlet. But at the end of the day, by this point, I'm just done caring that the movie is just so mid. I mean, that's the sad thing about it is, it's not like so bad it's truly a train wreck as much as we've pointed out these flaws and complained about it. Like it would be better, it would be more remembered if it was this awful train wreck of, oh my God, I can't believe what I'm watching. It's more just a mid-level movie. That's not, it's got some good stuff, it's got some good points, it's got some flaws, and is ultimately just forgettable
Right.
you know
Well, for me,
So
I just
it's,
didn't understand what the message was supposed to be. Like
yeah,
we've already kind of talked about it, like that she was going to stop being absent, that she won't let her past affect her present. Like either one feels like a stretch with the current way it is, and it just seemed like she didn't really endure that much change by the end. Like
right.
it just feels like it's going to be the same old patterns, the same things she's been doing and continuing to do the same things and want a music dream but struggling to do that because she's a mom. Like it doesn't you get to see her these
Yeah.
attempts, but you don't really get to see a moment where you're like, yeah, I feel like now her story's going to change.
Yeah, and it's not like Joe is the character that went through the most growth and change through the plot either. So
Right.
again, you're like, what's the point? Who was the main character? You're just left with, some good stuff, some flaws, and we kind of start to have the answer to why is this movie forgotten?
Yeah. And something you mentioned in the very beginning about you said that like Paul Schrader writes stuff that feels a little more like clinical and stuff. I think it made sense when you said that. It clicked for me because how I felt after finishing this movie was that everything felt like manufactured and fake. Like it was like these characters were written, but they weren't real by any means. It just felt so artificial and stilted. It was like an attempt at writing real people, but it's like they
Yeah.
didn't meet like a real complicated person. Like there's just not enough depth to these characters. So you just feel like by the end that not that you completely wasted your time, but like in essence, like you feel like you didn't get anything out of it by the end.
And it's so weird because like Paul Schrader is capable of writing and dealing with emotional, even like realistic emotion, even if it's in a bit of a cold, clinical way. And he's often, like, again, this just was not what you would expect from him. Like, if you watch Taxi Driver, if you watch Hardcore or American Gigolo, uh, um, or, any of his other films, that you expected something more simultaneously more brutal and more human than you actually got. And that's also kind of where I get come to the point that, maybe he was kind of phoning this one in, going through the motions, that in 1984 he'd been really passionate for this project, and then it died and he moved on, and it kind of started to get revived, and he went with the momentum, but he wasn't into it. And so by then he'd lost, whatever muse, and was just doing the best he could.
I don't know why this movie got greenlit at all. I don't know what the budget was, but I was very disappointed. When you have a movie and you're telling a story from a musical perspective and the music is not compelling, I just don't get it. But then on top of that, with all the holes in the script and what didn't work, it does make sense why this never saw the light of day.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the movie and our thoughts. But how did the world of 1987 feel about Light of Day? Well, the critics were mixed. Some praised the film's family drama, especially Gina Rollins, with Roger Ebert giving it 3.5 stars out of 4, Others were more negative, with some feeling Fox was miscast and the drama veered into TV-level melodrama. At the box office, the film made $3.5 million for third that weekend in its first weekend at the theaters. But it saw a steady decline and had disappeared from theaters by March, ultimately taking in almost $10.5 million domestically, with no information about how it performed internationally. We also don't have information on the budget of the film, so we can't really speculate on whether it made its money back. The soundtrack of the film was released as well, and the song Light of Day actually reached 33 on the Hot 100. It would go on to become a signature song for Joan Jett, who performs it in concert to this day. Bruce Springsteen also performed the song in concert frequently into the 90s. The film itself was released on video but generally faded from the pop culture memory with the coming years. Taft Barish Productions would release 3 more movies in 1987 under the deal with TriStar. The films were Ironweed, starring Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep, which would earn Oscar nominations for both, The Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, and The Monster Squad, with only The Running Man making its budget back at the box office. Later, in 1987, Taft Broadcasting was the target of a successful hostile takeover by Carl Lindner Jr., who began stripping the company and selling it for parts. The first to be sold was World Vision, which contained Taft Entertainment, purchased by Aaron Spelling Productions in 1988. Keith Barish would go on to produce the mega hit The Fugitive and co-found Planet Hollywood restaurant chain. Schrader would continue to write and direct films like Affliction, Autofocus, and The Card Counter. He would also continue to team with Martin Scorsese on films like The Last Temptation of Christ and Bring Out the Dead. Michael J. Fox would have a hit in 1987 with a different film, The Secret of My Success, released just a few months after Light of Day, and make more of a successful transition into dramatic fare with Bright Lights, Big City and Casualties of War. While continuing to have success in both film and television through the 90s, Fox is today best known for his fight with Parkinson's disease after going public with his diagnosis in 1998. This was Joan Jett's only starring role, and she would return to her successful and legendary music career. And that is the episode. So now we have to look ahead at what is next. And next up for us is breaking free and finding out what we've been looking for. Because we're all in this together with Troy, Gabriella, and Sharpay. Yes, it's High School Musical on the next episode of the Savage Movie Night podcast. Thanks so much, as always, to my co-host, Robin Kristen, our editor, Javi, and the entire Savage Content team. Thanks to our sponsor, Jazzology with Willard Jenkins. And most of all, thank you to our audience. Remember to give us a review wherever you get your podcasts from. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a follow, give us a like, click the notification bell, leave a comment, all the good YouTube things. I'm your host, Adam, and we'll see you again in the next episode of the Savage Movie Night Podcast.